Are you ready? You think you could tell us what to do? You think you could tell us what to wear? You think that you're better? Well, you better get ready. Bow to the masters. Break it down!
Hi, welcome to the Straight Lions Talk podcast, off-season edition. Today we're going to be talking about the Detroit Lions as usual. This is your Detroit Lions information center for everything that is Detroit Lions football. And today was no exception. Quinn's still making moves. The retirement of Rashean Mathis, the release of Joique Bell. We're going to get into some free agency. We're going to be talking about some players we like for the Detroit Lions going forward. We're also going to be talking about, with the scouting combine coming up, maybe a few rookies or a few draft picks that may potentially be targets for the Detroit Lions. We're going to focus mainly on the defensive side of the ball today, so we'll get into that. But first, I'd like to start by thanking you guys, the fans, as we usually do. We couldn't be doing this. The views have been incredible. Our last 2 weeks have been the most views we've had on our podcast at any period. So that's a good thing. We thank you guys. We are on Facebook now, Straight Lions Talk Podcast. We are on iTunes, STR Lions Talk Podcast. We are on Stitcher, STR Lions Talk Podcast for all you Android users. We were just approved with that today, so we're pretty excited about that. We are on YouTube. You can find us on there, STR Lions Talk also. And it's just been great for this entire year. Has been really good. We've had a lot of success, and things have been moving in the right direction. We thank you guys, the fans. So with all that out there, if you guys want to find us, the best way to find us is probably on Twitter. I like it a little bit more than I like Facebook. So if you want to find us on there, we're at STR Lions Talk Podcast on Twitter. And like I said before, we're on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Spreaker.com. We're in a plethora of places for you to get this information. If you like this information, please send it on to your friends, your family, Lions fans, anyone in general. Just send it out through Facebook and get on our Facebook account, like us. And if you get on iTunes, please give us a review. We'd like to hear your feedback. And if you guys ever have any questions, please leave it on our Twitter account at STR Lions Talk. We'd really appreciate it. We like interacting with you guys because this show only works with you guys interacting with us. We have comments a lot. We really enjoy them, and we try to answer back all the time. And if we find some good ones, we talk about them on the show, some fan stuff that maybe some fans are curious. We want to know what you guys are talking about right now in your private groups, at the bar, wherever it may be when you're talking Detroit Lions. What are you concerned about? What are you focusing on? That's what we want to know. So leave us a question. Leave us a rating on iTunes. We want to be a top 100 show on iTunes by next year. We'd like to be a top 100 show on Stitcher. So please leave a rating for us. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. We really appreciate it. And everything you guys have been doing has been great. It's just been a great year. I think next week marks 1 year exactly when we started doing this. And it's been phenomenal. We enjoy it. It's something we like to do. And we like giving you guys information that we like to hear. So that's what this whole premise of this show is about, information that you guys like to listen to. So that's what we do here. This is a new segment we're going to call Quinn's Moves of the Week. And Bob Quinn, since he's been taken over as the Lions GM, has had no shortage of moves for the Detroit Lions. A lot of them have been predicated towards the front office, which, like we talked about in previous shows, was a mess. He's eradicated that. He's brought in his guys, O'Brien, new strength and conditioning coach, new front office personnel, new scouts, new scouting directors. He's just turned over the organization from within in a way that hasn't been done in years, and it's a breath of fresh air going forward in this new venture that is Bob Quinn. So with Bob Quinn's Moves of the Week, he signed a linebacker, Jerry Franklin, formerly of the New Orleans Saints. Okay, that's great. He signed Larry Holmes, offensive lineman, formerly of the Atlanta Falcons. He was a third-round pick by the Falcons. He's out of Southern Miss. He's 6'6", 320 pounds. He's had a few injury issues the last few years. He missed 12 games in 2014. Maybe we'll catch lightning in a bottle. Maybe he's someone that can move over to that right side. But it's just another guy to bring into camp to compete for that right side, the glaring hole within our offensive line. We here think that the Detroit Lions are going to focus their free agency in veteran help for the offensive line. That's what we think is going to happen. I don't think they're going to draft someone. If they do, it's going to be someone that's developmental. I don't think it's going to be a high pick a high pick used on an offensive lineman in this draft. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to go with a veteran presence on that offensive line because of the youth they currently have on the offensive line. I don't think they're just going to keep adding to it. So I think they're going to attack the offensive line in free agency. That's what we think here. And another move the Detroit Lions made, and Quinn has made this week, is they hired a quarterbacks coach. Brian Callahan is the new Lions quarterback coach. Callahan, the son of former longtime NFL assistant and once the head coach of the University of Nebraska when he ran that into the ground after Frank Solich was fired because he went 11-1 and 12-0 and 11-1, 11-1, and that wasn't good enough in Nebraska, so they moved on to the pro-style offense of his father, Bill Callahan. And, Bill Callahan's a great coach in the NFL, a good offensive coordinator, great offensive line coach. And his son has a reputation. He's been with the Denver Broncos for the last 6 years. He actually worked with Cooter and under Cooter when Cooter was in Denver previously. And, along with Cooter liking Brian Callahan, Peyton Manning also liked Brian Callahan. Now, with this recent news about Peyton Manning coming out, I don't know how much you guys take into that. I don't think Peyton Manning is just going to bash the guy on national TV when he was asked about it. You can find that on YouTube. We posted that interview with Peyton Manning talking about Brian Callahan and Jim Bob Cooter. We posted that on our Facebook page, and we posted it on our Twitter page, both at Straight Lions Talk, STR Lions Talk on Twitter, and Straight Lions Talk on Facebook. So you guys can find it there if you're looking for that. We posted what Peyton Manning actually said in the interview. And, well, to just give you a phrase here, he said Callahan will be a top-flight quarterbacks coach, offensive coordinator, maybe a head coach like his dad in the NFL. I guess that's glowing remarks from Peyton Manning. If you're Brian Callahan, you'd really like that going forward in your young coaching career. But he is our new quarterbacks coach going forward for the Detroit Lions, and I actually like the move. It's not like he's going to be implementing offense and doing all these things. He's just going to be working with Cooter, looking for tendencies, helping Matthew Stafford, preparing him for what the tendencies of a defense may be going into the game, and that's going to help, So it's a move that the Lions had to make. I'm kind of glad that they hired an they hired a quarterbacks coach instead of having Jim Bob Cooter be the quarterback's coach and the OC. I think he's going to have enough to do with being the offensive coordinator, and to delegate that responsibility to someone else like Brian Callahan is a plus in our book for the Detroit Lions. It's not a huge move, but it's one of those moves that had to be made. But the biggest moves that happened this week, and only one that Quinn was responsible for, possibly two, but one that Quinn was responsible for, was the retirement. Jeez, Louise, I keep saying that. The release of Joique Bell, the running back for the Detroit Lions, the Benton Harbor High School graduate, the Wayne State college player, the local hero around here in Michigan. He was a good feel-good story. Started with the Detroit Lions in 2011, played 4 years with the Detroit Lions, and I can't say I'm surprised by the move. I thought it was a move the Detroit Lions were going to have to make. And I don't really mind the move. I kind of thought it was coming. Bell kind of had a down year last year. His best year, I believe, was 2012 with the Detroit Lions. He rushed for like 900 yards. And that's very good. That was very productive. He was a feel-good story for the Detroit Lions. And I I kind of wanted Joique Bell gone. I think we need an upgrade at the running back position. And I'm not trying to burst your guys' bubble. Zach Zenner is not the answer, okay? That's another feel-good story, and that's the bleeding heart of all Detroit Lions fans for whatever reason. People look at him, and I don't know if they see themselves. I don't know why people think that Zach Zenner is going to be this Pro Bowl running back or this big piece of the puzzle the Detroit Lions are missing. Zach Zenner probably isn't going to make the team next year. I'm not a huge fan of this guy. I thought he played very well in the preseason. People made more out of it than what it was. He played special teams okay. And you know what? If he makes the team and he can produce, I'm all for it. And I was wrong about Joique Bell. So, I mean, guess it shows you what I know. I kind of thought Joique Bell was going to, I kind of was tired of this feel-good thing, but that was when the Lions were losing a lot. And I just wanted productive players instead of trying to fish in this undrafted free agent pool for running backs like everyone does. And, it seemed to me like the Lions were trying to outsmart themselves all the time by, going after a guy like a Joique Bell back then, picking him up and, look at all the talent. And I kind of felt that way about Zach Zenner. And it's a good story and, okay, I just don't see why I have to love Zach Zenner. I mean, people will get mad about this comment and say that Zach Zenner is going to kill it and all this crap, but he's not that good. He carried the ball 16 times and was injured for the season. I just don't see him holding up in the NFL, and I don't think he's going to be a very effective runner. I mean, this isn't Travis Jarvey. This isn't who was the kid that Michigan had? Sam McGuffey from the University of Michigan. He jumped over a white dude in his high school videotape, and somehow that made him a great Michigan running back, and people couldn't wait to get their hands on him. I'm not even sure if his name was Sam McGuffey. It might have been. I don't know. But anyway, I think his last name was McGuffey. But anyway, yeah, he was garbage too. And I'm not really a huge fan of the Zach Zenner bandwagon. I don't think he's even going to make the team. I have to be realistic. I think the Lions would be better off going after someone like C.J. Proheis in the 5th round with one of our 3 potential 5th-round picks we may have going into the draft, depending on what the compensation is for Nick Fairley. Could be a 4th-round pick. More than likely, from everything I've heard, it's going to be a 5th-round pick. I like C.J. Proheis. I think he's everything Joique Bell is, but athletic. He can receive out of the backfield. He's a good blocker. He can run in space. He can run in between the tackles. He can do a variety of different things. He's 6'1", 220 pounds. Very effective in his only year basically playing at the University of Notre Dame last year before he was injured. If he's healthy, I believe that would be a very good pick in the 5th round for the Detroit Lions. We'll talk about that more next week when we get into the offensive side of the ball. But we're focusing on the defensive side of the ball. We just want to get that in about the release of Joique Bell and how we feel about it. I like Joique Bell. I think it's a feel-good story, but it was time to move on. He put in 4 seasons. He was obviously regressing. He was hurt this last year, and I know I can't wait for him to go to the New England Patriots in this offseason and kill it next year, and we struggle, and everyone rips Bob Quinn. He's giving them our players. That's probably Belichick's idea. Yeah, that's what he's doing. Not quite, but as for Zach Zenner, I don't think he's going to make the team, so everyone can get off that bandwagon. Theo Riddick is going to be one of our guys. Amir Abdul is going to be the other one. But we need to find another running back, a productive running back. It's not going to be Matt Forte. I would be shocked if Matt Forte came over. From everything I've heard, he's looking for about $8 million a year annually for about 3 years. For a 30-some-year-old running back, Matt Forte is actually older than Joique Bell, so I don't see that happening. So everyone on the Matt Forte's coming to Detroit bandwagon, okay, you can get off that bandwagon along with the Zach Zenner bandwagon too. I just don't see the love, and I don't understand the whole dynamic behind any of the Zach Zenner love, and I don't really get the Matt Forte crowd because that would not be a good decision to pay him $8 million a year to come in and a 30-year-old running back, when you could probably get someone that would be similar to his ability in the draft, like a C.J. Proheis. I think that would be the best option for the Detroit Lions in the 2016 season to solve some of their running back issues they may have. And everyone get off George Wynn, too. That guy's terrible. We need to upgrade that position, so that's another hole we're going to have to fill for the Detroit Lions. Also, the retirement of Rashean Mathis. After 13 NFL seasons, he announced his retirement yesterday that he will not be coming back for the 2016 season. I have a few issues with this because Mathis, while he was a very good player in the NFL, at one time he was one of the top cornerbacks, very productive in Jacksonville. Someone the Lions have always kind of wanted to get their hands on for a long time. But he also came out and said he wanted Jim Caldwell to stay, and that would influence his decision to come back. And I highly doubt that Quinn took that really into too much of an issue with Mathis' retirement. Like, I don't think he was sitting in his office like, man, I don't know what to do. Should I really let Caldwell go? But, man, Mathis said he wouldn't come back, so I better keep Caldwell. I highly doubt that really influenced Quinn's decision to keep Caldwell at all, because we said at the end of the year show that we thought some of the players the Lions would release would be Joique Bell. We thought Mathis either would retire or they would release him. And another player I'm not that upset that's not there. I know people kind of really like Mathis and then they want to say, oh, he should be a coach. I don't really see him being a coach 1 year after being done playing. I just don't see that. I think he needs some time off and not really dip his feet right back into another or a different situation other than the one he's been in for so many years. I think he could help some of the young guys, but I think that's a little overrated sometimes too. He might know a few guys' tricks and a few tricks to, push a receiver off his route, or, how a receiver likes or a quarterback likes to set up a play, or whatever it may be, the tricks of the trade, if you will. I think Mathis would be a help in that area, but he wasn't really that good this year. You could tell his heart maybe was out of it a little bit. He fought concussions, and I'm not really that sad he was there. I mean, I think teams picked on him a little bit this year. I thought he was a hindrance, and I thought that side of the field, or his position, the number 2 cornerback position, was actually upgraded when Nevin Lawson came in. I thought that helped solidify that position after Mathis went on the DL. I didn't really think, I really didn't think he was, I didn't think he was that effective this last year. It's probably unpopular to say, but it's true. I didn't think that he was so much of a factor. I thought teams picked on him. If they weren't picking on him, they were picking on Stephen Tulloch, and that's another player. When is he going to be released? And I hope he is released very soon. I understand he led the team in tackles, but that doesn't account for teams picking on him relentlessly in the passing game and optioning or audibling out of plays to get into pass plays to take advantage of Stephen Tulloch being on the field, as many a team did. So Mathis retiring. Bell has been released by the Detroit Lions. 2 positions the Detroit Lions are going to need to fill. Today we're going to be focusing on the defense precisely. This is what we're going to focus on. We're going to look at the defense, and we're going to come up with a few options on a team that could look a lot different on the defensive side of the ball. But some more comments we want to get into here. Heath Evans, what a huge douche. That guy is just the biggest idiot in the whole world. I don't know what his vendetta is against the Detroit Lions. He's always dogging the Detroit Lions. Constantly. Him, Warren Sapp. I understand they're a bad franchise the last few years, the Detroit Lions. But Heath Evans, what did he ever do? I know he has some Super Bowl rings and he walks around like he did something. I don't remember Heath Evans being a factor on any of those teams. I don't remember Heath Evans ever making some play or doing something that helped to affect the game in some way. Yeah, maybe he picked up a block here or there, but most of the time Heath Evans was probably on the bench or playing special teams. Heath Evans is such an idiot. Some of the stupid crap he said. Lombardi was good for Stafford. Are you freaking kidding me? What game was Heath Evans ever watching, saying that Stafford couldn't pick up the complexity of Lombardi's offense? I don't think anyone picked it up. The offensive line included, the running backs, the receivers. It was ineffective. Did anyone watch the Detroit Lions offense when Lombardi came in? Remember, this was an offense that had everything going for it under Linehan, and everyone wanted Linehan gone because of his predictable play calling and some of the other things he did. And I'm not saying Stafford, maybe he can't comprehend a playbook the way Drew Brees does or Peyton Manning. But the facts of the matter is he regressed tremendously under Lombardi. And for Heath Evans to come out and say that would be good for Stafford, and Stafford needed Lombardi to get to that upper echelon in the quarterback atmosphere or universe, I don't get it. I don't see what Heath Evans was watching other than his own personal vendetta against the Detroit Lions and his love for the New Orleans Saints and his love for the New England Patriots. And he comes out with stupid statements saying that teams are going to figure out Cooter's system that's too simple and teams are going to figure it out. Well, wasn't Lombardi's system the one that teams at the end of games last year were laughing at us at the end of the game? Like, we knew every play they were going to run before they ran it by the way they lined up. And we would get slaughtered in those games. Kansas City, the Minnesota Vikings, both times we played them said they knew every play we were going to run before we ran it. And I'm sure, like we said before, that's the case a lot in the NFL. But the facts of the matter are the Detroit Lions were so predictable and they were so terrible on offense. Jim Caldwell and Heath Evans are the only ones that seem to think that his system was sound. And maybe it was, on paper, and maybe it was when you spoke it out loud and said all the things you were going to do against these defenses. But the facts are that offense was terrible. It was an offense that was ranked in the top 10 for 3 or 4 years under Linehan, and we thought we had that part of that side of the ball figured out. We thought, hey, if we could just get this defense right, get Stafford to develop a little bit, the offense will go no matter what. All we have to do is get the defense clicking, just like they did in 2014. We had a great defense, a semi-unproductive offense that ranked 23rd, I believe, that year. And that was only because at the end of the year we picked it up a little bit. But a run game that produced, 100-yard rushing game combined in the Lombardi era, I believe that's right. Something like that. We were a terrible running team. We couldn't even run the ball. We couldn't even throw the ball. And this last year, we had Stafford looking like Alex Smith. So for Heath Evans, the biggest douche in the whole world, and I don't even know why he's on NFL Network. He's terrible. He contributes nothing other than his own opinion on the dumbest things and acting like he was some kind of Hall of Fame potential fullback or some productive player in the NFL. I mean, he was at a position that not even half the teams, maybe 3 teams in the league have a fullback nowadays. Heath Evans wouldn't even be in the NFL if it was today's game. And just an absolute freaking idiot. He's just like Warren Sapp, always dogging the Detroit Lions. And another former player coming out against the Detroit Lions and against Calvin Johnson, of all people, is Lynn Swann. I understand Lynn Swann and some of these other former players, they like to come out and say, it's all about the team. What did he do to elevate our team? I've heard Michael Irvin come out and say that. I've heard Deion Sanders come out and say that. I've heard a lot of players, Troy Aikman, guys like that. But I'll say this, Troy Aikman, Michael Irvin, and Lynn Swann should not be in the Hall of Fame. The only reason those guys are in the Hall of Fame, and especially someone like Troy Aikman, go look at his numbers. They're absolutely terrible career numbers. Michael Irvin, he was a very productive receiver, but he wasn't a Hall of Fame receiver. Lynn Swann, 5,000 yards. I think he had 300 receptions and 50 touchdown receptions. The only reason those guys are in there because Lynn Swann can take his 4 Super Bowl rings and slide them across the table to the committee. Michael Irvin and Troy Aikman walk in, take off their 3 Super Bowl rings, and slide them across the table. What do we remember Lynn Swann for? What do we remember Michael Irvin for? And what do we remember Troy Aikman for? We don't remember any of those people for Week 2 against the Philadelphia Eagles. We don't remember them Week 6 in a rainy 3-0 game against Buffalo. We don't remember those games. What we remember is Lynn Swann catching that pass on the sidelines, Lynn Swann catching that Hail Mary pass over the middle of the field in the Super Bowl. Now, I remind you, these are all Super Bowl and playoff games. We remember Lynn Swann playing against the Raiders and catching touchdown passes. We remember Troy Aikman and Michael Irvin in Super Bowls catching touchdown passes, playoff games against the 49ers, playoff games against the Packers, dominating those games, being effective in the moment. in those games, the big moments, they were effective. That's what we remember them for. We remember how good those teams were, how dominant those teams were, the Steelers of the 70s, the Cowboys of the 90s. That's what we remember those guys for. And for Lynn Swann to come out and say Calvin Johnson isn't a Hall of Famer, I mean, yeah, you know what? I agree with Lynn Swann. I don't think Calvin Johnson's a Hall of Famer if you go look at his numbers. But for Lynn Swann to have the brass to say that, I don't get it. I don't understand why he comes off that way because he's in the Hall of Fame. If it was now, he wouldn't even be in the Hall of Fame. He played the same amount of seasons Calvin Johnson did. And look at his production. I understand it was a different game then. I understand they ran the football more and passing wasn't such a influence. But it just rubbed me the wrong way that these guys come out and dog Calvin Johnson like he did something wrong. Why? I do agree with their statement, so it kind of sounds like I'm being a little bit of a hypocrite, and you're probably wondering why I'm dogging Lynn Swann. I just get tired of the narrative that, Calvin and Stafford need to be better, and if Calvin had a better quarterback, he would be in the Hall of Fame. Well, I know Terrell Owens didn't get in, but look at the quarterbacks he had throwing to him. Tony Romo, early in his career, he was effective, kind of a Stafford type of quarterback. He had Steve Young at the beginning of his career, and Donovan McNabb for one season. So, and then after that, it was just a bunch of nobody quarterbacks throwing him the football. Why, that he was effective and a very good player, that is Terrell Owens, I just don't get it. And no, I don't think Calvin Johnson is a Hall of Famer. And the only reason I'm defending Calvin Johnson against Lynn Swann is I don't think Lynn Swann has any room to talk. He should just thank the gods that he was on a team that the NFL won't be happy until that whole team is in the Hall of Fame. Why, there was a lot of good players on that team. It was a dominant team. That's the only reason he's in there. Because of the Super Bowl rings, he can slide across the table. That's why, and the big catches he made and him being on TV. But for Calvin Johnson, there's actually a segment we were going to do. I kind of came into it a little wrong. But I know this isn't going to be a popular thing to say with him more than 99% out the door. I don't think it's going to affect the Lions that much. I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue that people are making it out to be. I think the Lions will be able to fill his shoes with a multitude of people. It might be a group effort. I think people like Eric Ebron are going to need to step up. But I don't think it's going to be the big issue people are making it out to be. I think it's going to take, a little bit of luck to get a receiver in here that can be productive. And I think there are going to be times we miss him. I'm not saying he's terrible. I'm not saying I wouldn't want him back. But honestly, for $24 million, I don't want Calvin Johnson back. I've said this before. I said it last year on our show that we wanted to trade Calvin Johnson due to the contract stipulations. If he wanted to break his contract down where he's making, $12 million a year, then that's a more reasonable number than the $24 million and the $20 million or whatever he's supposed to make next year, and then $16 million the following year, and then it finally, after another year, it finally gets down to like $10 million. It was a stupid contract. Tom Milan did a dumb thing, signing a guy, a receiver, overvaluing this receiver position, thinking he was getting ahead of the market, where the market for the receiver is kind of going a little bit the way of the running back. You're starting to see teams not wanting to pay wide receivers because they can get the production in other areas and other ways, the way the Patriots do. Now, I think the Patriots need to upgrade the receiving core. I think it was evident in the playoffs this year that they had no receivers that could extend the field and get downfield and beat coverage downfield and make a difference in the long passing game. But I just don't think that Calvin Johnson not being with the Lions is going to affect the Lions in the way people feel it is. I mean, yeah, there's going to be times in the red zone that, I'm sure a game's going to pop up where we lose and Stafford missed 4 throws in the red zone. If Calvin was there, he'd make them, and see Stafford can't throw to anyone but Calvin, and whatever it's going to be. But, like we talked about before, Eric Ebron, TJ Jones, Golden Tate, I like that group. I like TJ Jones. I think TJ Jones is going to be a good slot receiver. I think he's going to take the place of Lance Moore. I know people keep mentioning Corey Fuller. That guy's just absolutely terrible. Corey Fuller is garbage. And finally this year, when everyone was bragging him up and we were dogging Corey Fuller, he finally didn't get the playing time, and TJ Jones ended up taking a lot of that playing time from Corey Fuller. And even when Lance Moore came back from injury, TJ Jones was getting that playing time. And I'm happy for TJ Jones. I think he's going to be a very productive receiver for the Detroit Lions going forward in the 2016 season. But getting back to Calvin Johnson, Trent Dilfer said Calvin Johnson wouldn't be retiring if he had more consistency over his tenure with the Detroit Lions of winning. And I agree with that. I think Calvin Johnson is retiring, some to do with injuries, but more to do with the constant losing. I think it just wears on people. We've talked about it. We won't talk about it a lot here. But, I just don't see that, the losing, it has to affect him. To go into the season, people said he would still be retiring even if the Detroit Lions were winning, and they were 11-5 last year. Right, they were 11-5, and I think Calvin was very hopeful coming into the season. He sounded really excited coming into this season. But I think he was very disappointed by the end result of this season and the things that happened during the season and the talk of possibly blowing this thing up and starting over. I don't think he wanted to do that, and I think he wanted to move on in the way that a lot of players do when they have the finances that Calvin Johnson has, and he's done it his way. I don't think he's done anything that really is that surprising with the retirement. I mean, it was shocking when it was announced, like, really, Calvin Johnson's going to retire? But, if you really sit and think about it, it's really not that surprising. So, I don't think it's going to be that big of a factor for the Detroit Lions going forward. But we'll talk about that a little bit more next week when we do the offensive side of the ball. But getting into the defensive side of the ball, the Detroit Lions have quite a few contracts that are up come free agency. And we can actually start re-signing our own guys and start negotiating. And I hope the Detroit Lions are starting to do that with a few guys, especially guys like Tier Whitehead, possibly extending contracts on Larry Warford, Darius Slay, Ezekiel Ansah. A guy like Devin Taylor, he's up. This defense, I don't think people are putting enough emphasis on what this defense could look like coming into next year. I think that is going to be the glaring. I think that's the one thing people aren't talking about. That's going to be a glaring hole going into free agency is all the defensive help we're going to potentially have to either go after in free agency on the defensive side of the ball or within the draft. I just don't think people are talking about it enough, about how many players potentially could not be there that were starters for the Detroit Lions going into next season. Tyron Walker, free agent. James Ahedibone, free agent. Now, James Ahedibone was benched for Caduce, but Caduce, free agent. Haloti Ngata, free agent. This defense could look totally different. I mean, really think about it. James Jones, Haloti Ngata, Tyron Walker, James Ahedibone, Tier Whitehead, Travis Lewis, Cujo, Darryl Tapp. All of these guys put a lot of minutes in during games, and they were effective in a lot of their roles that they played for the Detroit Lions, especially guys like Tier Whitehead, Travis Lewis, good special teams guy. Jason Jones, very effective last year. Haloti Ngata came on late in the year, but we traded a third-round pick for Haloti Ngata. This defense could look a lot different. Caduce is going to be a very popular safety on the market with what he showed last year and how much he's grown since he's got to the Detroit Lions. He's going to be and demand a lot of money on the market. He's going to demand that. He's going to be a very popular choice for people going into free agency. And, Haloti Ngata, does he go back to Baltimore? I kind of think he might. Tier Whitehead is going to, if he hits free agency, there's going to be a lot of teams that want Tier Whitehead, especially someone like Jim Schwartz, who's now with the Giants. Is that who he's with? No, he's not with the Giants. Who's Jim Schwartz with? I can't remember. Anyway, wherever Jim Schwartz is at, I can't remember. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. But yeah, wherever Jim Schwartz is at, this defense, people aren't talking about how much this defense could look. It could look totally different going into next season. And, we could have 6 to 8 new starters. That could that could cause some hard times for our defense going into next season. I think people are focusing on Calvin Johnson and now Joique Bell leaving, and you have the retirement of Rashean Mathis also thrown into that mix. I mean, look at all those players. Mathis was our starter last year, where our front seven are basically gone. We have DeAndre Levy coming back, hopefully healthy. I mean, cross our fingers that he's healthy next year. And that's the only linebacker we potentially have coming back. Currently, we have Steven Tullett coming back. I'm expecting him to be released whenever it's an appropriate time for him to be released. It's going to benefit us on the cap. So, so you have Tullett. We'll only have Ezekiel Ansah up front. As it stands right now, we could have Tullett, Ezekiel Ansah, DeAndre Levy, Nevin Lawson, Darius Slay, Quinn, and Diggs, and Carter. I like the back end of our defense, our safeties and our cornerbacks. I like that, the secondary. But I'm worried about the front seven. And I think those are issues and places that the Detroit Lions are going to have to immediately fill for success going into next season. And I don't think you can just do it throughout the draft. I think you're going to have to do it within free agency also and get veteran guys. I mean, a few guys you could possibly get for the Detroit Lions in free agency are guys like Kyle Love. You could get a guy like Muhammad Wilkerson possibly. Rumors are he's going to be franchise tagged, and he would demand a lot of money. It could be a Sue-like contract, so I don't think that's going to happen. Although I would like it to happen. I like Muhammad Wilkerson. I think he's a very good player. I think he would fit very well in Detroit with what we like in our defensive tackles, attacking defensive tackles, guys that get upfield and get after the quarterback. Long, big, physical D tackles, guys like Sue, Fairley, that mold, explosive defensive tackles. I think that's, where the Detroit Lions need to focus mainly as the interior of the defense. And I think they're going to address it. I mean, don't be surprised if the Detroit Lions use their first 3 picks of this draft. And of the 10 picks we currently have, not counting the 2 compensation picks we're probably going to get, we could potentially have 12 picks in this draft. And maybe Quinn gets more. Is he going to follow the Patriot model of acquiring a large quantity of picks? The Patriots are known for that, acquiring a lot of picks. The Denver Broncos have adapted that, and look at the success they've had. Their theory is if the league's 40% and you're only going to keep 3 or 4 of your guys in every draft, let's get double that and keep 8 guys. So that's kind of the theory, and that's kind of where we're at this year. With 3 potential 5th-round picks, we have a 3rd-round pick, 1st-round pick, 2nd-round pick. We have a pick in every order of the draft. We have 3 in the 5th, 2 in the 6th, and 1 in the 7th. That's a lot of picks in the back end of the draft. Maybe we could position ourselves to move up and get players in this draft, because this draft is deep in defensive talent. And I wouldn't care, nor would I be shocked if the Detroit Lions, I think they're going to go defensive tackle. I think they're going to take Sheldon Rankins with the 16th pick. That's where I think they're going to go with that pick. I think he's going to be a very effective player down the road. I think he's going to be very effective as a rookie, but I think down the road he's going to be a dominant defensive tackle. And that's something Quinn's going to start. He's going to start building this team from the inside out, from front to back. And he's going to start on the defensive side of the ball. It's the area where we're going to be the weakest. We need an upgrade at tight end. We need an upgrade at backup quarterback. We need an upgrade at, at guard and maybe on the right tackle position. But we need to mainly focus on this defense. This is where we're going to find trouble if we don't focus on it. I think Quinn and his staff are going to focus on that side of the ball a lot this offseason. I think you're going to see a lot of our picks be defensive picks. I personally wouldn't care if out of the first 6 picks in the first 5 rounds, if 4 to 5 of those were defensive guys. As long as we take C.J. Proheis in the 5th round with one of those 5th-round picks. Because we potentially could have 6 picks within the first 5 rounds. And 7 picks within the first 5 rounds. That could be big. That's going to be pretty nice. So I really like the direction this is going for the Detroit Lions. I like what Quinn has done, and don't be surprised. Don't be shocked if the Lions take a lot of defensive guys, a lot of defensive linemen. This draft is very deep in defensive linemen. I wish we had 2 second-round picks, because I think we could potentially get a lot of talent in the draft with those picks coming into the season next year. I think they better. People talk about us getting offensive linemen. People talk about us drafting a quarterback. While I want to do those things, I would rather have us take advantage of the strength of this draft. The strength of this draft seems to be up front. It seems to be the front seven personnel on the defensive side of the ball. It seems to be the guys in the interior line, especially, where the strength of this draft lays. And the way the Patriots always attack these situations is they attack the strength of the draft and address the needs of their team with those strengths in the draft. If the draft was heavy in cornerbacks, the Patriots drafted a lot of cornerbacks. If the draft was heavy in defensive linemen, they drafted a lot of defensive linemen. And I think that's where we're going to go, in that same direction. Now, why I think Quinn is going to copy a lot of the things the Patriots did, strategic moves and the way, he implements a system and a strategy for the Detroit Lions, I still think, and I believe this wholeheartedly, that Quinn had to disagree a little bit on some of the moves that the Patriots made at times, not saying, hey, maybe we should get Brady a little help here on this side of the ball and maybe not focus so much on, the undrafted free agent wide receiver, and maybe actually go out and draft a wide receiver in the upper rounds of the draft and not be so, stubborn in our ways that receiver doesn't matter and we need to focus more on the defensive side of the ball or focus on the offensive line or focus on other areas that they were already deep at. But I really believe that this draft, the way it lines up and with the needs we have, I think we could potentially draft 2 defensive tackles within the first 2 rounds easy. I will just about bet if Sheldon Rankins is there, we're going to take Sheldon Rankins. And if the second round comes along and someone like Adolphus Washington's there, Victor Butler, Johnson from Penn State, guys like that are still there. I think we could potentially take those guys too. Third round, same goes. We'll be drafting at the back end. If someone happens to slip, like a Dodd or I can't think of anyone. Someone like a Shaq Lawson, but I don't think Shaq Lawson will go into the third round by any means unless he has an injury concern. We could potentially get a linebacker in that round. The kid from Ohio State, Harper. We could get. Just I can't think of anybody right now because I don't have any of that stuff written down. Some of the other needs, free agency is actually pretty stockpiled in a lot of these moves too that the Lions need to make. Like we talked about Kyle Love, Malik Jackson, someone we really like, but I think the Denver Broncos are obviously going to franchise tag him. He is so good. I would love for him to come over. I would pay him to come over just for the success that he has had and the success he has shown the last couple years and the way he has played and the versatility he has up and down the defensive line. He would be a great asset for the Detroit Lions. Damian Harrison of the New York Jets, nose tackle, premier run stuffing guy in the league. He had the highest run stop percentage among defensive tackles the last 3 years. He could be a guy. The Lions could bring in, maybe they give Nick Fairley another shot. He played very well last year. It was his highest graded year at any point in his career, but he did play in a 1-year show-me contract. And he was hurt, and he was limited in playing time with the St. Louis Rams. Is Nick Fairley a guy we bring back, or is he kind of, or is Jim Caldwell done with Nick Fairley and the coaching staff done with Nick Fairley, or has he learned his lesson? William Hayes, a defensive end out of St. Louis, a guy we actually went after a couple years ago in free agency, but he ended up opting to go back to the Rams. He could be a guy. He's pretty effective, long, rangy guy. He is a very good run defender. That's something the Detroit Lions really like, is their guys to be able to be good run defenders and hold that edge. That's a guy, William Hayes, could be a potential target for the Detroit Lions. Derek Shelby of the Miami Dolphins, defensive end. He made an impact last year. He 41 pressures, 25 run stops. He replaced Cameron Wake when he was injured and was very effective in that role and getting that additional playing time. He took advantage of it and was a very effective player last year. Ian Williams, same boat as Ian Williams, excuse me. He's in the same category as a Damian Harrison. very good run-stuffing defender. I know that could be a potential target. Are we going to go, defensive tackle in the first round with Sheldon Rankins like we think we are? Maybe get a guy like Harrison or Williams to go alongside him, and maybe draft another guy later in the third round, a guy like Sheldon Day, someone like that. Or is a guy like Reggie Ragland going to slip and go into the second round because he might not test out very well in the NFL Combine? But I don't think Reggie Ragland – I'd love for Reggie Ragland to slip in the second round, but I don't think it's going to happen. Akeem Hicks, defensive tackle of the New England Patriots. He was probably their best inside defender last year. Played a limited role, didn't really get a ton of playing time, but was very effective in the time he did play last season for the New England Patriots. And he's another guy that Quinn has familiarity with, and he's already brought in a few of the Patriot coaching staff. It'll be interesting to see how many former Patriot players he brings in to potentially implement the system and some of the things they want to accomplish in the way the Patriots do it. Kind of bring the Patriot way to Detroit, because it's going to have to happen with players. You saw guys like Bill Parcells do that, and you saw guys like Bill Belichick do that early in his career when he was bringing his guys in to help show the guys, this is how we want to do it, this is how you study, this is how you prepare, this is how you, focus in a game. These are the things you look for to be a professional. So I think, those are some of the things the Detroit Lions possibly could do, is get a guy like Akeem Hicks coming in from the New England Patriots to, help implement the philosophies he wants to trickle down from the front office onto the field. Brandon McBain, defensive tackle from the Seattle Seahawks, could possibly be an option. He was part of the Super Bowl championship season. He can make an impact for the Detroit Lions. Good rotation guy. Not all these guys we mentioned are going to be, Pro Bowl players. Sometimes you just need some depth. But if you move into the back half of the linebacker position, it's pretty thin this next year. Got Danny Trevathan. I would like him to come to the Detroit Lions. I think he'd be a huge upgrade to play either outside opposite of DeAndre Levy, and then potentially draft someone like Reggie Ragland if Sheldon Rankins is gone in the first round, take him. That would really solidify that linebacking core and give us a guy that can be an edge rusher along with being able to stop the run and be very productive in the passing game. So, those are options for the Detroit Lions. Not a lot of linebacker help there. It's pretty thin at the linebacker position. I think that's an area the Detroit Lions are either going to have to re-sign a guy like Tier Whitehead, or they're going to have to draft linebackers to fill some of the needs they have at that position, because I think it's pretty thin this year in the free agent pool for guys that potentially could make an impact for the Detroit Lions. We do need a safety, and a guy, David Burton of the Denver Broncos, a guy Mike Payton last week mentioned on our show when he was a guest with us, potentially could be a target for the Detroit Lions. A very good player, hard hitter, downhill guy, pretty decent in coverage. Shouldn't cost a ton. That's a good thing. And we could also draft a guy, because I believe we'll draft a safety at some point in this draft to develop. But I think that Quinn's going to get a veteran guy in the back end of that defense. I don't think he's going to trust it with a rookie in his first year if we don't re-sign Caduce. Ultimately, that's what I'd like us to do, is re-sign Caduce. He's familiar with the defense. I think it'd be a better option for the Detroit Lions. George Icoa for the Cincinnati Bengals, a safety. Very good player. I'd love to get my hands on him. I think he would fit perfectly within the defense the Detroit Lions want to run. He actually had the lowest grade out of all safeties last year, but he was very good in pass coverage. So that's kind of where he sits. He's kind of more of a pass coverage guy, so I think he'd be a very good addition to the Detroit Lions if we get our hands on him. I doubt we do. I think he'll go back to Cincinnati. Tremaine Johnson is the cornerback I'd like the Lions to go after the hardest. They're going to spend money on a cornerback. Tremaine Johnson's the guy I'd like to have us go after and help really solidify those outside edges for the Detroit Lions. While I like Nevin Lawson, I think Tremaine Johnson would be a huge upgrade, and that would eliminate us even having to draft a cornerback. If we did, it'd be a late round developmental guy, maybe a practice squad guy, something like that. It wouldn't be such an urgency, what I don't think it is, but this would help really solidify that back end and help maybe give that defensive line, which maybe will struggle next year, a little more time to get upfield after the quarterback if the quarterback has to hesitate a little bit with that secondary. So I kind of think that's where the Detroit Lions are going to. I think they're going to spend their money on secondary guys and offensive line and maybe on a few key rotation guys on the defensive line. But I expect the Detroit Lions to spend most of their money in the offseason on solidifying that defensive line and maybe attacking and going out and getting a guy like Tremaine Johnson from the St. Louis Rams. I'd love for that to happen. Patrick Robinson, San Diego Chargers. I wouldn't mind him coming over either, maybe a cheaper option over Tremaine Johnson. And you have to remember, teams like the Jacksonville Jaguars have a ton. Jacksonville has $60 million to spend in free agency. $60 million. So that's going to be one of the first choices for a lot of players to go to because they're going to have to overpay for players, and players know this. So they're going to go there for their payday. A guy like Tremaine Johnson, I could easily see going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't want to overpay for Tremaine Johnson, but I would go after him. He'd be one of my number one targets going into this free agent period for the Detroit Lions. I think that would really help our secondary on what could potentially be a bad defensive line for the Detroit Lions. Hussein Abdullah, this is the guy actually over Ialokoa for the Cincinnati Bengals. I'd actually like Hussein Abdullah a little bit more from Kansas City. If we could get him, I think that would be a very good player for the Detroit Lions. He can play all over the field. He's performed well in any role the Kansas City Chiefs have given him. And he's not even a starter. He's just a part-time player. He plays both the free safety and the strong safety positions. So he's very versatile. I think that's key nowadays is being able to be versatile in the defense and being able to do a lot of different things the way the way offenses are constructed now in the passing-happy league that the NFL is. I think this would be a good get for the Detroit Lions to get Hussein Abdullah. I think, love for the Detroit Lions to get him. I think he'd be perfect if Caduce goes. And even if Caduce doesn't go, and they end up re-signing him, I think Abdullah would be a very good player for the Detroit Lions to go after in the 2016 free agent period. I'd really like that. Leon Hall would be another player to add depth to that cornerback secondary position. Hall potentially could kick over and play a little bit of the safety position, but he's been a very good slot cornerback the last few years. He's earned positive grades all over the field and coverages in the last 9 NFL seasons. So being a veteran, maybe he won't cost that much, and maybe we can bring him in to be, a depth guy and a rotation guy coming in and have a little bit more versatility where we're not relying on someone like Alex Carter, who didn't play last year, so this will be his rookie year. Nevin Lawson, who's a little bit streaky. When he's on, he's playing really well. When he's not playing well, he struggles a little bit. Darius Slay, can he continue his uprise as one of the top NFL cornerbacks, and can the Detroit Lions lock him up? You go get a guy like Tremaine Johnson, Abdullah, and possibly a Leon Hall or a Patrick Robinson. Guys like that might be insurance in case they can't get a deal done with Slay going into next season. So, and we could franchise tag him, but that's just where we stand with all this. The show ran over a little bit today. I hope it was very helpful. We will do another show about the defense and the offensive side of the ball. Next week will be about the offensive side of the ball. But we'll do another show talking more about the Detroit Lions defense when free agency comes along and we kind of see what direction we're going with coming into the NFL draft. But I'd like to thank you guys for joining us, and we will talk to you guys next week.